Grief can often feel like an immovable boulder, crushing and overwhelming. If you've ever wondered how to lighten this burden, you're not alone. Inspired by a reader's question about how to manage the weight of grief, this week's blog is in the form of an advice column, and it explores how changing your perspective can turn these heavy burdens into lighter, more manageable experiences. Hey everyone, I'm Laverne McKinnon, and welcome to the Moonshot Mentor blogcast, where I provide tools and insights to support your career growth, including grief work. Unprocessed grief leads to a loss of resiliency. Resiliency is a critical element to long-term career success. Long-term career success leads to financial stability and fulfillment. So that's why I'm both a coach and a certified grief recovery specialist. Okay, let's jump into it, starting with an inquiry from an anonymous reader who said, "While I'm beginning to take the steps to realign my health with myself, I still continue to have days where the grief is overwhelming and I feel the rocks I carry turn into immovable boulders. I'd like to learn ways to lessen those burdens, to turn those boulders into butterflies and carry what I need to or what I'm stuck with in the most accessible way I can." So I'm responding to this reader in the form of a letter. Dear anonymous reader, I'm so sorry for your loss. I don't know the specifics of what happened, but I relate to the feelings of overwhelm and the longing to lessen the burden of those immovable boulders. It's a powerful and apt analogy. Grief is overwhelming. Our brains are literally trying to make sense of a new reality. Have you ever had the experience where you moved a piece of furniture and kept coming back to it as if it were still there? I once moved a nightstand, and it took me weeks before I remembered to not put my phone on it. And when I went to sleep at night, I was just on autopilot, and I would drift off, and I would reach over to the table to place my phone on it, and of course, it would drop to the ground. Mary Frances O'Connor writes beautifully in her book, The Grieving Brain, about how our brains map to the things that we're attached to in order to feel safe and secure. Now, when that thing, whether it's a person, pet, object, place, job, etc., is gone, our brains need to reorient and accept that the focus of our attachment is no longer there. That confusion, as we adjust to a new reality, can be quite overwhelming. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to give ourselves permission to mourn our losses. It helps the brain to understand that a new map must be created. So how do we change rocks into, like the immovable boulders, into something that's not so heavy? Well, first off, it's not uncommon for grief to feel heavy. So heavy that we lose motivation, passion, and cognition. If that has become a worry for you, it's important to know that you're not doing anything wrong. Sometimes people worry that they're grieving incorrectly because they have misinterpreted a bereavement expert, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's work on the 5 stages of grief. Those stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, many believe that these stages are sequential and rush through them, feeling worse when it seems like their grief is intensifying. However, Kubler-Ross never actually intended for these stages to be linear. Grievers move in and out of these stages in a non-linear fashion. There are also additional frameworks and studies identifying other stages of grief, like meaning making. What I want to share with you right now is that these immovable boulders, your thoughts and your feelings, are normal and reflect the depth of your attachment to what was lost. Consider this quote, which I personally found really, really helpful. Anything you have, you can lose. Anything you are attached to, you can be separated from. Anything you love can be taken away from you. Yet, if you really have nothing to lose, you have nothing. That's from Richard Kalish, who was the author of a book called The Psychology of Human Behavior. Now, I noticed that your use of the phrasing immovable boulders of grief suggests you had much to lose. This profound sense of loss can manifest in various ways. One common experience are grief spikes, where you might be functioning well one day and then the next day you struggle to get out of bed. While many talk about the challenges of the first year after a loss, the hard truth is that grief spikes can happen anytime, even years later. So how to turn boulders into butterflies? What I'm about to share is simple but not easy. Transforming boulders into butterflies requires a shift in perspective. When you face the immovable boulder of grief, what do you see? I literally want you to imagine this in your mind. and articulate either in words or in writing what you see. So when I imagine that immovable boulder, here's how I interpret it. A giant rock that could crush and kill me. Another version would be an obstacle to overcome to reach a peak. I also can see a resting spot offering shade, and I also see a perch that I can climb on top of, and I can see what's in front, beside, and behind me. So take a moment right now to jot down your own thoughts about the immovable boulder. Don't second guess yourself. Whatever you see is valid. Now, we do this because your observations reveal how you relate to the boulder. For example, if you see it as a rock that could crush you, it might indicate fear and intimidation, suggesting that the boulder has power over you. Now, if you shift your view and see the boulder as an obstacle to overcome, it suggests that you see it as a challenge. And this perspective implies a struggle, but also a potential for growth. Now, looking at the boulder as a perch to view your surroundings, that transforms it into a tool for insight and partnership, which can be empowering. Consider how, when you see the boulder as a resting spot that offers shade, it can represent comfort and acceptance. So by exploring these perspectives, it allows possibility to blossom. Now, take a moment to imagine how immovable a boulder could transform into a butterfly. It doesn't need to be realistic. It just needs to make sense in your imagination, which then can shift how you feel. This exercise in perspective, seeking support, stepping outside your comfort zone, and tapping into creativity helps transform metaphorical boulders into lightness and clarity. So now I want to get to what are you actually stuck with, which was part of your inquiry. The hard truth is that we can't rid ourselves of grief. We can learn to cope and be with it. We can learn to define our relationship with it and recognize that our grief comes because we are attached to a person, pet, object, place, job. Grief is a testament to our ability to bond. What you don't need to be stuck with is any hurtful or harmful meaning that you have created as a result of your grief. When I was fired, I created a meaning of being a failure, a loser, and worthless. Yes, I failed, but I was not a failure. Yes, I lost my job, but I was not a loser. No, I was not worthless, but I no longer had value to my employer. The new meaning that I wrote for myself after I recognized that I had permission to grieve was that I was no longer a fit and was capable of finding a new match. So a final thought for you, dear anonymous reader. I really appreciate you sharing your journey and your powerful analogy of turning boulders into butterflies. It's clear that navigating grief involves not just enduring, but also seeking new ways to understand and cope with the pain. Your efforts to realign your health and perspective are inspiring. As you continue to explore different ways to view your grief, remember that each shift in perspective can offer new insights and relief. By reimagining this boulder as a tool or a source of comfort rather than an immovable obstacle, you create space for growth and transformation. This approach not only helps lighten the emotional load, but also allows you to find moments of peace amidst the struggle. Thank you again for your openness. I hope these reflections support you in transforming your grief and help you find a path towards greater comfort and understanding. Keep nurturing your resilience and creativity as you navigate your journey. I'm sending you so much love. Okay. That's it for this week. Let me know what you think about the advice column approach, and please comment or DM your questions or thoughts. Next week, I take a look at how deadlines can be both motivating and stressful. While there's great value in deadlines to create accountability, to prioritize tasks and track the progress of our goals, we often create arbitrary deadlines that are unrealistic and ultimately unhelpful. So come back next week and learn more about how deadlines impact our careers and our ability to manage setbacks and failures, including grief. Now, before you go, please do rate and review the blogcast. It's immensely helpful to supporting my work. And remember to head over to Moonshot Mentor on Substack for journal prompts to help you through the weight of any grief that you might be holding. You can also visit me at moonshotmentor.com, where you can find links to all of my social and how to work with me. A very big thank you to Lynn Chen for the video and audio editing. You can find her on social at Ms. Lynn Chen. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week.